Okay, well, welcome everybody. It's clear that we have folks from around the world, and we're always so pleased when we have people that are joining us from all across the planet. Nothing makes me happier than to have a nice group like this joining us. So we thank you for taking the time today to join us. Hopefully you're going to get a lot of tips and tricks of how to write a better abstract. So if this is where you wanted to be, welcome. If you didn't want to know how to write a better abstract, then there's plenty other webinars that I can recommend for you. But this one is dedicated to how to write a better abstract, particularly for the UNC Water and Health Conference. We're going to get started, and I'm going to make introductions and talk about the conference and the abstract process. And then we'll have somebody that will give you a lot of information and tips and tricks on how to generally structure and format your abstract. And then we'll have people talk about more the technical and WASH aspects of writing an abstract for this conference. And then we'll answer questions. So that's just to give you a broad overview of how this particular webinar is going to run today. So again, welcome. My name is Kata Lang, and I am the director of projects at the Water Institute, but I also direct the Water and Health Conference. So I wanted to introduce myself and let you know that we're really glad that you are a part of today's webinar. I wanted to introduce you to our esteemed faculty who are joining us today. They have a lot of experience in peer review and submitting abstracts and presenting abstracts. And so because they're faculty affiliated with the Water Institute and with the conference, I wanted to introduce them to you and take their word for what they're going to tell you more than mine. So first, I wanted to let you know that Marie-Lena Excellent is a professor here at the UNC Gillings School of Global Public Health. And you may recognize her from last year's conference if you were at the conference. She helped to moderate the plenary session that was focused on Haiti. And so we're very pleased that Marie-Lena could join us. I also wanted to let you know that Ryan Cronk, Dr. Cronk is joining us at the Water Institute, leading a lot of our research. And so he's a senior research associate, and he will be talking specifically about how to craft a very WASH focused and WASH targeted abstract. So definitely make sure that you are paying attention to Marie-Lena, and then you listen to Ryan about how to write a better WASH targeted abstract to capture your research. And then we have Dr. Ben Tidwell, who works with World Vision, but is also an affiliated faculty member of the Water Institute. All three of them have expertise in writing abstracts, in reviewing peer-reviewed literature, and now they're becoming experts at talking about the conference. So this will be your panel of experts that's going to guide you through and give you tips and tricks on how to write a better abstract. Let me give you a bit of background on the Water and Health Conference. We are going into our 13th, 14th year of hosting the Water and Health Conference. It's always held in October each year in Chapel Hill. For a couple years, it was virtual, obviously, because of the pandemic, but we are back in person. And our first back in-person conference was last year, and we'll be holding our next in-person conference here on October 23rd to the 27th in Chapel Hill. So please make every effort to join us if you're able to. We'll also be offering a hybrid format. So if you can't make it, then we'll be able to hopefully Zoom you in and you'll be able to join and participate remotely. Again, we just want to let people know that this is a WASH conference. So water, sanitation, and hygiene, and anything related to water, sanitation, and hygiene, specifically with an emphasis on science, policy, and practice. So that's a pretty far and wide reach across the WASH spectrum and sectors. And so, but we are focused, on water, sanitation, and hygiene. So you'll see and you'll walk the halls and meet people and mingle with people who are policymakers, practitioners, researchers, academics, government folks, NGO folks, students, and we come together across all these sectors and across the planet to talk about some of the largest challenges facing water sanitation and hygiene for the planet. So if you're interested in any of those things, please join us. I wanted to also let you all know that abstracts are due by April 28th. And so that means that we close the portal. And so if you can try to get your abstract in sooner rather than later, that is our recommendation. You will also need to be registered if you plan to present in person at the conference. And so we'll talk a little bit more about the process in a moment, but essentially the process looks like everybody will submit their abstracts by the 28th. Then we go through a sorting process based on the theme or the focus area of your abstract. And then we send those bundles of all those abstracts in those themes to our peer review committee, which is made up of 20 academics, very high esteemed, ranked academics and experts in your particular field. And they will review your abstract, and then it comes back to us, and then it goes to another review. So we have a double-blind review process. So don't try to send me chocolates or try to sway me. I don't make the decision. It's all based on your score and your rank across all of the abstracts by all of our peer reviewers. And so I will let you know that we offer the first top 60-ish, depending on the size of submissions, but we generally offer the top abstracts for verbal presentations. So if you are in the top 60, you will be offered a verbal presentation. That means you will have about 12 to 15 minutes to present your research in person in front of the audience. And it's a great way to get your research out there and to get visibility for your work. So that's why you would want a verbal presentation. If we will also offer the next tranche of approximately 60 to 80 ranked abstracts, a poster session. So that's how we typically tend to rank and to order things. It's a highly competitive process. I will let you know that we get anywhere from 400 to 500, sometimes more than that, abstracts each year. And so if you do the math, you're looking at maybe the chance of a 1 in 3, 1 in 4 chance of being ranked. You can submit more than one abstract for sure. But again, that doesn't affect whether or not you get accepted. It just means that you've got more to present. And so maybe by the law of numbers, it increases your chances, but really it all depends on your ranking as to whether or not you get offered a verbal or a poster presentation. You will need to register if you're planning to come in person. And so that's why I suggest that you start looking for travel scholarships. You start looking for opportunities to have your travel and subsidized or funded if you aren't able to cover the costs yourself. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. I will always refer you back to our website for more information about the conference, but also about the process. Also, you can't bypass this. If you're trying to submit an abstract, you must go to our website and submit your abstract on the conference page. Ms. Quinn has put the link to that abstract portal in the chat. So definitely click on that if you want to follow along and see how you go about submitting your abstract. So go to the Water and Health Conference website, click on the button that says Submit Proposal For, and this in particular is for the research abstract. If you're here to talk about side events, you're a little too early. We're not offering our workshops on side events till later on, but this one is specifically for anybody submitting a research abstract. So how do you do that? Again, click on the button that says Research Abstract, and it will take you here, and it will sort of bring up this form. And you'll see here it says Verbal and Poster Presentation Abstract Submission Form. So you must fill out the form, and this goes into our pool. And then we will send you a confirmation that we received it. And then you will have to wait because it takes approximately a full month and maybe a month and a half for us to review and go through the double-blind review process and to get back to everybody about whether or not you have been ranked high enough to be offered a verbal or a poster presentation. So like the website sort of instructed, make sure you read the instructions and let us know if you have problems, but it should be fairly clear. A lot of text, I know, but you know, you're academics, so hopefully you can get through it. Do pay attention to the abstract requirements. It's available on the conference website. So all of this information is there. It's not like I'm creating this new, but here are some reminders that we want you to keep in mind as you are drafting and creating your artful abstracts. They must be received by the 28th, as I've already stated. You must submit the online form, as we've already stated. Now, what's new to some of you, if this is your first time, is that you are limited to 500 words. So make sure you are using your word count feature and function and making sure that you're not exceeding the 500 word count. Also, please be aware of the title to your abstracts are limited to 15 words. So don't try to squeeze your entire abstract into your title. Some of you are laughing, but we've seen it. And so that's why we are now telling people don't do it. 15 words for your title. Please, in your submissions, tell us about your key learning objectives for your presentation. So, you know, full abstract submission, put that on the form. Please also fill out the theme. So if it's focused on water, but great, water's a pretty broad topic. So we would say water, but then be quite specific. If it's related to microbial water quality, specifically looking at a particular water microbe, then be that specific if you can be, because that helps us sort and determine who reviews your particular abstract. We won't review incomplete abstracts, but we'll talk to you in a moment about whether or not you can submit an abstract that where the research hasn't yet been completed. And the answer to that is yes, but you do still have to tell us, give us the full structure of what your research is. And again, like we mentioned, you can submit more than one. So, if you've got more research going on, then definitely submit it. And then clearly, plagiarism is not accepted. So, and we look for that. And so please make sure that if you're getting other folks to review, or if you are looking at other abstracts for some tips and tricks on how to structure it, that's fine, but you cannot plagiarize. That's not appropriate. And so we will reject anything that looks and is plagiarized. So let's move on. And like I mentioned, here are some examples of highly successful or highly ranked abstracts from previous years. You can go back and look. We collate all of the abstracts that come in and get ranked into a book, and Quinn has put the link to that abstract book in the chat. So if you're interested in seeing previous examples of highly ranked abstracts, please check those out. But again, don't plagiarize. All right, now it's my pleasure to turn it over to Marilena Excellent, who will talk you through the general format of how to just write an abstract in general. So welcome, Marilena.
Thank you very much, Director Keita. Next slide, please. We will talk about the structure of an abstract, what to put in it. Remember from Keita's presentation, incomplete abstract will not be reviewed, so we will guide you to avoid that. And we mean by that, not missing any of the 4 sections. Next slide, please. So typically, our abstract structure will involve 4 sections: the background, the methods, the results, and the conclusions. And remember that from Keita, as Keita mentioned earlier, you will only have 500 words to fit into those 4 sections. Next slide, please. Now let's dive into each section. What do we expect under the background section? It's a place where you will have a big picture. You will convey in 1 or 2 sentences the big picture of the problem that you have tried to address or have addressed. And then in 1 sentence, you can identify the knowledge gap. And in 1 sentence, of course, give the research objective of your project. So typically in the background section, we expect you to explain why you have done the research, what drive the topic, and of course, present the objective of your research. Next section, it's about the methods. This is a very important section. Next slide, please. Under the methods, you will provide an overview of the basic design of your study and the research method that you use. Please take the time to concisely describe. Please, sorry, is it better? So please take the time to describe the type of research. Is it formative? Is it randomized control trial? Is it a pilot study, a lab-based study, a modeling study? Be specific so that it's clear to the reviewers. And include important details of things such as the sample size, the study location, what was the context, and for how long did you conduct your study? Or is it still in progress? And what analytic methods used? What are the outcome measures, among other key information? Next slide, please. Under the method section still, there are some questions that you might want to consider answering. For example, what were the activities done and when did they happen? By whom? How was the data collected? When was the data collected? Did you conduct pre-data collection and post-intervention data collection? What was the study design? Why was there an intervention and control group? All those key information are very important under the method section of your abstract. For example, did you collect the demographic data? Did you conduct a quality test, water quality test, observation of behavior, among other key information? And how was the data collected? Did you use survey or do you conduct focus group discussions? What happened? And how much data was collected? This is, again, the sample size that we would like to know about if you have the information. What kind of analysis was done? What tests were performed? Quantitative, qualitative, or mixed methods? It's very important to be clear and on point in that section. Next slide, please. Moving on to the results. The result must be connected to the methodology that you use and all the things that you said that you have done. So in that section, we expect a summary of the main research results. We know that most of the time there's a lot of research results that you may have, but we please encourage you to highlight the most important findings, because an abstract is not gonna convey everything about your research, but it should be compelling, written in a compelling way with key important facts and detail to help the reviewer say, oh, I want to learn more about that project. So this is a big picture that you will provide. And those findings, like I mentioned, should be related to your conclusions as well. For example, please include specific details such as if you conducted robust statistical analysis and you have the results, such as p-value, please include those in your results section. Next slide, please. Last but not least, this is the conclusion section, where you will summarize the main conclusion and key takeaways from your research. In the conclusion section, there shouldn't be any new information that you introduce. It just, you go back and you summarize the main finding, message to others, or next step even. What have you learned? What should be learned from your research? But please avoid making broad claims or general statements that are not supported by your results. There should be consistency throughout your abstract and flow well. Next slide, please. Now we're going to learn more about in the context of the Water and Health Conference. Over to you, Dr. Ray.
Great, thanks, Marilena. Next slide, please. So how to make an abstract interesting. I think for this conference, just to contextualize what Marilena mentioned, this is a WASH conference, so you don't need to spend an enormous amount of time convincing the abstract reviewers and your eventual conference participants that your problem is particularly relevant and important. So you don't need to spend a lot of time and a lot of space, because you only have 500 words, trying to highlight the burden of disease estimates and all of the JMP statistics and other systematic reviews and significant evidence on your topic. What you really need to do is think about how you communicate why within the WASH and water and health space, it's an important advancement for science policy and or practice. So, you want to start broad. You want to highlight and ground your work within the broader research topic area that you're working in. And then you want to get specific in your results. And this is where you do want to be pretty precise with, where do your findings really advance the science, advance what programming and practice compared to what's already been done? How does it move the needle, as another way of saying it? And then finally, with your conclusions, you do want to link this, because this is a interdisciplinary conference. You have not just researchers, but you have policymakers, practitioners, people from the field, people from all over the world. You want to go back and ground your findings within the broader significance. What does this actually mean for the people who will attend your workshop? How can they take something away from it to improve what they're doing, whether it's a research project or programming or policy? So that's just a couple high-level tips on how to make your abstract more interesting. Next slide, please. For some of you may be submitting abstracts for work that's in progress, and that's okay. We do want to make sure that you're communicating as much information as possible to the abstract reviewers. So, your introduction and methods will largely be similar as if you were writing about a completed project. Hopefully, your work is advanced enough that you know the methods that you're doing, and you have a pretty precise topic and research questions or objectives. So you want to make sure those are clear. In your results section, it would be great if you had some preliminary data. You might want to present some of that. In the case that you have not collected data, let's say you're collecting data this summer, you might talk about the types of things that you might find from your fieldwork. And then, finally, in your conclusion, you want to highlight anything. If you have preliminary findings, really highlight those, and again, their significance. And or talk about what you might find. Talk about what you might find from your study. And so we have in the past had people write successful abstracts for work in progress. So just make sure you're being especially clear on preparing that type of abstract. Next slide, please. So now we'll get into several slides on some specific questions that were submitted. So thanks to those of you who submitted questions in advance. We'll also have some time at the end to answer any questions from you all live on this call. So, the first question here is, when submitting an abstract, how much is too much theory and how much is not enough empirical results? So on theory, it's really going to depend on what you're doing. If you're making a novel adaptation of a theory from another field, like let's say you're using a theory from political science, which may not be particularly well known by folks in the water and health space, you might need to spend some more time talking about it. If you're using a tool or an approach that is widely known and understand in the water and health space, you might not need to just spend a couple sentences describing its background. And on empirical results, you do want to, I would suggest that you highlight and you know, I'll just plug very quickly, Ben Tidwell. I think he'll be able to speak from the perspective of an abstract reviewer. So he'll be able to kind of provide some additional nuance to this as well on, you know, what as a, you know, as acting as a reviewer, what he's looking for when he's reviewing abstracts. You know, you want to provide empirical results that are, you know, focus on the, again, like I was mentioning before, the new and novel findings. What's interesting about what you're doing. Definitely don't spend a lot of time focusing on, you know, something that just confirms what we already know in the sector. So next question, after complying with the editorial guidelines of a journal, how can a novice writer make the abstract interesting for it to be accepted in the conference? You know, I think I mentioned a lot of this on the previous slide, but again, I'll just harp again, focus on what's new and interesting as compared to the other literature or resources or reports that are already out there. What is it about what your work does that sets it apart? So how do you suggest tailoring our abstract to this audience? Again, as I kind of mentioned, you know, you want to tailor this. Expect that everyone attending has some knowledge of water and health and WASH. You know, so you want to, you know, not spend a lot of time talking about things as if you were communicating to, say, you know, your colleague who is a toxicologist or your colleague who, you know, works in say geography, right? Like you can write this to a WASH audience. Next question is, when writing an abstract, do you have to use the full name of the pathogen that you're researching on, or can you still use only the abbreviation, for example, Mycobacterium tuberculosis or MTB? So it's generally good practice across the board, not just for this conference, but in paper writing or abstracts for other conferences, to when you have a long word that you want to use either abbreviation or an acronym, spell out its first use. So, you know, in this case, I would, you know, definitely take the time to spell out Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and then after that, you would put in parentheses MTB, and then any subsequent reference to that in your abstract, you can use MTB. But with the exception of maybe the acronym WASH and maybe SDGs, I would not assume that your reader is going to know precisely what either the acronym means or you know, what you're shortening for the abbreviation. Next slide, please. So what is the basis for decision for a verbal or poster presentation? So these are all, the basis for decision is all based on a score. Your abstract will be scored by 2 reviewers, and the highest rated scores will be offered a verbal presentation. The next highest scores will be offered a poster presentation. The only exception is if you had a abstract that scored high enough to be a verbal and you'd prefer a poster, we will, you know, make that exception. That's totally fine if that's what you prefer. So again, you know, make sure you're structuring your abstract so that it's going to score as highly as possible in the review process. Is there a fee to pay for presenting? So there's a fee to attend the conference in person, but there's not a fee to present. So, but to present in person, you obviously have to pay the conference fee. So it's not an additional fee to present. Your abstract will be accepted based on merit and score. So you're able to attend as just a conference participant and not present. You're also able to attend to present your poster or your verbal presentation. And so please take a look at our website for the fee structure that we have set up. Can there be a group presentation? For the verbals, no. We only allow one presenter, preferably the first author or a collaborator will submit, and either the first author or one of the co-authors on the abstract will present the work. You can't have, you know, your friend who maybe is attending the conference but wasn't part of your project present your work. Somebody who actually contributed to the work needs to present. So yeah, I'm happy to talk about that a bit more if there's a follow-up questions. Next slide. So just kind of building on this, you need to be a first or co-author to present. And this is another really important thing is the conference organizers will only communicate with whomever submitted the abstract. So if you submitted the abstract, you have to communicate to all of your other co-authors the any status update. So if your abstract was accepted for verbal or presentation, you need to communicate that. If someone else is going to be presenting instead of whomever submitted, you need to communicate that to the conference organizers. So please pay attention to that. Don't assume that everyone on your research team is going to get the information. So yeah, that's covers the second bullet point on the slide. And so, you know, one potential way to think about this is if someone who's a co-author is most likely to present, it might make sense for them to go ahead and submit the abstract. If for example, let's say the first author is unable to attend, but you know the second author is planning on attending the conference, maybe go ahead and have them submit just to kind of make communication a little bit smoother. The final thing is we are not policing the authorship criteria. There's no our conference does not have a precise authorship criteria, but we would recommend that you review widely available authorship criteria to determine who is an author on your abstract versus just someone who you might acknowledge on a slide or on the poster. So we have a link here that is one resource that we like to use at the Water Institute, the ICMJE criteria. This can help you determine who's an author and who's a contributor that would be mentioned in the acknowledgements. Next slide, please. So the next question asks about how the best way to come up with a title. So I would say this is the most important part of your abstract submission. The title is the most read piece of your work, whether it's published in a journal or it's an abstract in a conference. People are going to be quickly skimming titles to determine what sessions they want to attend, or if it's in a journal, if they want to read on in a paper. So you definitely want to iterate on this the most. Have your colleagues and co-authors review it and critique it and revise it. Maybe come up with some alternative titles and have your collaborators or some of your peers pick what they think is the best title. You want to make sure that it clearly conveys what you're doing. So don't, if you're doing a qualitative study, don't call it an impact evaluation just to try to get more people excited about it. Or whatever you might do, make sure that whatever the title is, it matches what it is you've done. You also want to make sure it's succinct because you only have a limited number of words that you can use for your title, and make sure again that it covers the main topic of your study. Next question is how to make sure that I've given the relevant and most important results. That you're going to have to make sure that you're very familiar with the other literature in this space or the other work that, if you're doing a more of a practice project, what you're going to need to be well aware of what other practitioners are up to and kind of doing. And again, you don't want to, I've seen abstracts that are very well written and clearly communicated, however, and their appropriate topic for the conference. However, they don't present any new findings. They're just kind of repeating and echoing, say, like the JMP statistics for Washington schools or something, for example. So you want to show how whatever it is you're doing differentiates from what everyone already knows, is already kind of public knowledge. So definitely spend some time doing that and looking at the existing literature. The next question has to do with the what are the main factors for successful abstract? Again, that has to do with the definitely review the abstract submission criteria. Those are the sort of criteria that the abstract reviewers are gonna use. There's plenty of resources online too for how to write a good abstract and structure it well. You obviously don't want to spend You have, I think it's 500 words that you have. You don't want to spend 400 of them, on an introduction, right? You got to make sure it's well balanced between your introduction, methods, results, and sort of conclusions and implications. So definitely, take a look at the conference criteria and make sure that your abstract meets those very clearly. In the abstract, how do we show the direct versus catalyzed impact of our initiative? So the way, there's a number of ways to interpret this question. The way we kind of interpret it is, make sure that you're properly characterizing what it is your study did. Kind of alluding to my previous example, if you did a formative qualitative research study in a community looking at maybe WASH behavior change, you want to make sure your title and abstract communicate that's what you did. That is a perfectly fine and acceptable project to submit and can be very novel and score very highly. However, you would not state in your title and your abstract that you did an impact evaluation. Make sure that your methods appropriately match what you communicate in your title and abstract appropriately match the methods that you actually used in your research. If we see issues where someone's inappropriately characterizing their work, your abstract will score very lowly, or it will be rejected, and you won't be able to present at the conference. So, make sure that's clearly communicated. Next slide, please. This question, someone's asking about, they're interested in learning how to write outstanding abstracts using secondary data and open source data. That abstract writing process is the same. And again, you can have a really high scoring, really interesting novel abstract score highly using secondary data. We definitely encourage that if that's what you want to do. Again, you need to highlight what's interesting and novel about what it is you're doing. Don't repeat the same old and the stats that everyone is already familiar with. Make sure that you are highlighting how what it is you've done is interesting, advances the field, advances the way we do science, policy, and practice. The next question is, I'm planning on submitting an abstract for a rapid review, but wanted to see how abstracts for literature reviews versus systematic reviews are typically done and is a preferred format or style. So the abstract for a rapid review is going to be pretty similar to a systematic review. You still need to have kind of an introduction and research objectives. You need to have some kind of method that you can communicate, and your results need to still synthesize the findings of your literature review. So definitely consult other systematic review guidance on, some folks prefer structured abstracts for systematic reviews. That might be a good starting point. Make sure it's clear. Again, your abstract's going to be scored just like any other type of research or any other product that's submitted. It's got to clearly communicate what's the novel and interesting findings and why should people care about it for this conference. Next slide, please. Is it significantly different from presenting at the Water and Health Conference as compared to a non-WASH related conference? It's very similar. So for posters, there will be if you're accepted for a poster, you will be accepted to a specific date. We have specific poster sessions each day. So you'll let's say if you're assigned to a Tuesday, that will be your day to put up your poster. You'll have to take it down because someone else will be using your poster board on a different day. And for your verbal, if you're accepted for a verbal presentation, you'll be assigned to a session and you will be given 15 minutes. And typically the way people like to split it up is about 10 to 12 minutes for presentation and 3 to 5 minutes for question and answers. If you spend the whole 15 minutes on your presentation, there will be minders in the room that will cut you off. We have to stay on time to allow people to switch between rooms if they want to attend different sessions. That's one thing where you can't run over time. You will be even if you don't finish your presentation, we will have to stop you and switch to the next presenter so that we're fair with our time allocations for different presenters. So please be sure to practice in advance and make sure that you're not trying to present 30 slides in 12 minutes. Okay, that's probably not a good rule of thumb. You're going to run over. So practice in advance. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, I didn't finish the second one. I would like to know if there's a specific maximum length for a sentence in abstract writing. In case there is none, what would the expert suggest as a guide of length of sentence? I think with any sort of scientific writing, always, if you can write a shorter sentence and it allows you to communicate more clearly, please do so. I always encourage folks to write shorter, clear sentences. So if you have a long run-on sentence that's got a lot of information, maybe break it up into a couple of shorter ones. The most important thing is make sure you're communicating your science as clearly as possible. Even within the abstract reviewers, not everyone's an expert in every topic. I don't have a lot of expertise in behavior change. Fortunately, Ben does. Other people are going to have more expertise on AMR or microbial risk assessment and that sort of thing. So you want to make sure that your results are clear and short and succinct and readable by folks with different areas of expertise. Next slide, please. Let's see. So I guess Kata will now talk about how to get some personalized abstract assistance.
Sure, and while I'm letting people know about this service, I also wanted to now open it up for questions. So have your hand raised and we'll get to you after I go through this bit. If you have any additional questions for Ben, for Ryan, or for Marilena. Again, it's a highly competitive process. And so the reason why I asked this group to assemble and for this group of experts to get together is to offer folks who might need a little extra support in writing an abstract. You might be new to WASH, you might be new to conferences, you might be new to WASH conferences, you might be new to academia, you might be new to research, or you might be old to all of these things, but you haven't submitted a successful abstract. So that's what this webinar or this particular session today was meant to do, is to provide you with additional support and just give you, a few tips and tricks on how to write a more successful abstract to get you higher ranked. And so there is a limited number, as we were talking about earlier. And so, our top ranked abstracts get offered a verbal, and then other folks get offered a poster. And so you've got a very limited amount of time to present your work. And so if you don't have experience in this space, then, it's great to talk to other folks who do. And that's why I've assembled this particular group of experts to help give you those tips and tricks for how to get higher ranked abstracts through the process. Not just to game the system, but actually how to capture your work in a more competitive way, I guess you could say. So we did want to let you know that we have a limited amount of space for personalized abstract assistance. So if you really do want additional support, then definitely reach out to us and fill out the form by the 18th, because as you know, the abstracts are due on the 28th. So don't reach out to us on the 27th. Asking for support. We can't sort of do that, but we will prioritize individuals from low and middle income countries or low resource settings. So if you don't have a WASH advisor, or this is your first time coming to the conference and you're just trying to get a little extra support, or you've got a couple of questions, we can offer you a limited amount of time with one of our experts here, and they can spend some time answering some questions. But again, there's limited space and we're going to prioritize based on need. And so as I mentioned before, your participation in today's workshop doesn't guarantee you're going to be ranked or recognized in the process. And so we can't guarantee that you're going to be accepted. and that your abstract's going to rank higher just because you magically, showed up today. What you've got to do is actually apply the lessons, submit your abstract. And again, it goes through the double-blind review process. But here are some ways that we've talked about in order to increase your chances of increasing your ranking. And so that's the hope and dream for this particular session today. As we mentioned, final abstracts are due by the 28th. And so we really encourage you to make sure that you're getting them reviewed before you submit them, if that's possible, getting extra support from your peers or from your advisors. And then if you really need additional assistance, then certainly reach out to us and click on that link there, and we'll be able to connect you with somebody who can maybe answer a couple of other questions that you may have. We cannot, unfortunately, redo your research. So if you've not done some great research, we can't help you there, but what we can do is help you write a better abstract. So, and that's what we're here to help you do. We can't sort of change the course of your research, but we can help you capture it in a better way. So if we can move to the next slide, are there any questions? And if not, I'm going to ask a question before we all depart. Make sure you contact us at the email address there that's listed on the slide. Always check back with our conference website for general conference updates. But again, if you're going to submit an abstract, make sure you are familiar with the process and make sure you complete the form. And make sure that you get your abstract in on time so that we can review it. A question for you all, since there seems to be only 20 of us or so now. I did hear from folks at the beginning of the webinar where you're from, but if you want to type into the chat where you're calling in from, we would love to see where everybody's at. Bonjour, Lee Gary, that's great. And you're from New Orleans. Gloria from Kenya, welcome. I hope this was helpful. David from Nigeria, Bisho from Nepal, somebody from Jamaica, Durham, what? Just down the road. Bruce from Rwanda, Malawi, fantastic, everybody. Netherlands, thanks, Rob. Okay, are there any, Nepal again, great to see you. Any other questions? Niger, bienvenue, Monsieur Ibrahim.
Peter, there was one question in the chat about references included in the word count that I'm not the official processor behind the scenes. I would assume the answer is yes, that any text you include is included in the word count. I would also say, and I was checking through this, that it's not often that in the abstract the reference is actually required. Like if you're, maybe if you're citing maybe very specific data that need, but I just looked through like Lancet Global Health at the last 10 articles they accepted, and there's no citation in any of that. People are making a claim in a couple of sentences in the background. And so, I would say like probably try to avoid that if possible, because it's just going to distract from, it's going to take away from word count you could use to make your points and be more compelling.
Gloria had a question about pictorials are not required on the abstract submission, correct? You are correct.
I don't think there's even a way to submit.
No, we wouldn't have a way to attach pictures. So, yep, no pictorials are required.
But very encouraged for, if you're accepted for a verbal or poster, to include
yes,
graphics,
absolutely,
images, whatever you need to communicate your research.
Yeah, definitely use visualizations to help the audience or the participants understand your research in a visual way. Good question. All righty, well, we hope that today's session was good and helpful. We look forward to receiving your abstracts. And Quinn has posted all the links that we referred to today in the chat. And so you can cut and paste, you can make sure you capture these for future reference. But again, they are all there at the conference website. So make sure that you're, again, checking in and seeing all of our information if you need to refer to it at a future date, because you're not capturing it all in this particular session. So again, we want to thank you for coming today. And thanks to Ryan and Ben and Marilena for guiding us and leading us through this. And thanks to Quinn and Manal for helping to backstop us and being able to host this session. And mostly thanks to all of you for attending. We would love to see you in Chapel Hill in October. So let us know and make sure that you're communicating and submitting some great abstracts. That'll increase your chances of being accepted. And so be safe, everybody. And we hope to see you soon-ish, and have a safe and a healthy, what month is it? It's April. So yeah, be safe, everybody. Thanks everybody for joining us today. And we wish you a great rest of your day.